The Shattered Promise. Welcome to Twisted Heartstrings. Welcome to Twisted Heartstrings, where love and revenge intertwine in the most captivating ways. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling stories that will keep your heart racing. Today's story will take you on an emotional journey through betrayal, heartbreak, and the burning desire for justice. Make sure to stay until the end, because this tale has twists you won't see coming. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from around the world. A love that bloomed in secret. Elena Martinez stood at the edge of the cliff, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. The coastal town of Maria Vista had been her home for 24 years, a place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were nearly impossible to keep. Nearly impossible, but not entirely so. She smiled softly, touching the delicate silver bracelet on her wrist, a gift from him. Adrian Blackwood was everything Elena had been taught to avoid. He came from wealth, from power, from a world so far removed from her own that they might as well have lived on different planets. His family owned half the town, including the luxury resort where Elena worked as a part-time receptionist while pursuing her dream of becoming an artist. Their first meeting had been unremarkable. Adrian had walked into the small art gallery where Elena was displaying her paintings, vibrant seascapes that captured the wild beauty of the coast. He had stood before her largest piece for nearly 20 minutes, saying nothing, just observing. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost reverent. "You see the ocean the way I feel it," he had said, turning to meet her eyes. "Not just beautiful, but dangerous, powerful, untamable." From that moment, something shifted in Elena's world. Adrian began visiting the gallery regularly, always when she was working, always staying longer each time. They talked about art, about dreams, about the suffocating weight of expectations. Adrian confessed that his father had mapped out his entire life: the right schools, the right career, the right wife from the right family. "But what about what you want?" Elena had asked, her dark eyes searching his face. "What I want," Adrian had whispered, stepping closer, "has never mattered. Until now." The secret romance. Their relationship began like a forbidden dance, thrilling and dangerous. They met in secret, at the hidden cove beneath the cliffs, at the old lighthouse no one visited anymore, in her tiny studio apartment when her roommate was away. Adrian showed Elena a world she had only seen in magazines: fine restaurants in the next town over, weekend trips to the city where no one knew them, stolen moments of luxury and passion. But more than the glamour, it was Adrian's vulnerability that captured Elena's heart. Behind the confident businessman facade was a man trapped by duty, suffocated by expectations, desperate to be seen for who he truly was. With Elena, he could be himself, the poetry-loving, philosophy-reading, genuinely kind man his family had tried to mold into something harder, colder, more ruthless. Elena fell deeply, completely, irrevocably in love. She ignored the warnings from her best friend Maria, who worked at the Blackwood Resort and had seen too many local girls get their hearts broken by wealthy summer visitors. "This is different," Elena insisted. "Adrian loves me. He says once he secures his position in the company, once he proves himself to his father, we can be together openly." Maria's skeptical expression haunted Elena later, but in those golden months, nothing could pierce the bubble of happiness she and Adrian had created. The promises made. 6 months into their relationship, on a warm summer night beneath a blanket of stars, Adrian held Elena close on the beach where they had first kissed. "I've never told anyone this," Adrian murmured against her hair, "but I hate the business world. I hate the manipulation, the backstabbing, the constant measuring of worth in dollars and influence." Elena tilted her head to look up at him. "Then why do it?" "Because it's expected. Because my father built this empire, and I'm supposed to carry it forward." He paused, then took her hand, pressing it against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. "But with you, Elena, I feel alive. I feel real. When I'm with you, I remember there's more to life than profit margins and shareholder meetings." "So what are you saying?" Elena whispered, afraid to hope. Adrian turned to face her fully, his blue eyes intense in the moonlight. "I'm saying that I love you. I'm saying that you're the only real thing in my carefully constructed life. I'm saying that once I turn 28 next year and gain access to my trust fund, once I have the leverage I need with my father, I'm going to marry you." Elena's breath caught. Adrian, I mean it. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple but beautiful diamond ring. This isn't official yet. We can't announce it. Not until the timing is right. But I want you to have it. I want you to know that my promises aren't empty. You're my future, Elena. You're everything. Through tears of joy, Elena let him slip the ring onto her finger. She wore it on a chain around her neck, hidden beneath her clothes, a secret promise that she held close to her heart. The growing dream. The months that followed were filled with careful planning and whispered dreams. Adrian spoke of the house they would buy, not in Maria Vista where judgment would rain down on Elena, but in the city where they could start fresh. He promised she would have her own studio, that he would support her art career, that their children would grow up knowing they were loved for who they were, not what was expected of them. Elena threw herself into her painting with renewed passion, creating pieces that spoke of hope and love and new beginnings. Adrian bought several of her paintings, claiming they were for his office, but she knew he kept them in his private study, a secret sanctuary he had created away from his family's prying eyes. My father wants me to take over the East Coast developments, Adrian told her one evening as they sat in her studio, surrounded by her paintings. It would mean relocating to the city. I told him I'd consider it. Elena's heart leaped. The city? Adrian, that's perfect. We could be together openly. He finished, pulling her into his arms. No more hiding. No more sneaking around. Just us, building a life. But there were signs Elena chose to ignore. The way Adrian never introduced her to his friends. How he always insisted on meeting in places where they wouldn't be seen by anyone from his social circle. The canceled dates when family obligations arose. The growing tension in his voice whenever she asked about when they might tell his parents about their relationship. Soon, he always promised. Just let me handle this my way. Trust me. And Elena did trust him. That was her mistake. The joy that changed everything. 3 months before Adrian's 20th birthday, Elena began feeling unwell. At first, she attributed it to stress. Her art show was coming up, Adrian had been distant and busy with work, and money was tight as always. But when the nausea persisted and she missed her period, a terrifying and exhilarating possibility presented itself. Elena took the pregnancy test alone in her bathroom, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold it steady. When the 2 pink lines appeared, she slid down to sit on the cold tile floor, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotions. Fear came first. They had been careful, or so she thought. Then worry about the timing, about Adrian's reaction. But gradually, as she sat there with one hand pressed against her still flat stomach, joy began to bloom. A baby. Their baby. The family Adrian had promised her was becoming real sooner than planned. But wasn't that sometimes how life worked? Didn't this prove that they were meant to be? Elena spent the next week in a state of nervous excitement, planning how to tell Adrian. She painted a small canvas, a seascape at sunrise, with 2 figures walking hand in hand on the beach, and in the distance, barely visible, a 3rd small figure playing in the waves. She would give him the painting, let him discover the meaning, watch his face light up with the same joy she felt. When Adrian finally had time to meet, nearly 2 weeks after her discovery, Elena's hands trembled as she set up the canvas in her studio. She had cooked his favorite meal, lit candles, created the perfect intimate setting. Adrian arrived late, his expression tense. I can only stay an hour, he said without greeting her with his usual kiss. Father has called a family meeting. Something about announcing a new partnership. Adrian, please, just sit down, Elena urged, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. I have something important to tell you. Something wonderful. He sat, but his leg bounced with impatience, his attention clearly elsewhere. Elena's confidence began to waver, but she pressed on, revealing the painting with a flourish. What do you think? She asked softly. Adrian stared at it for a long moment. When he looked up at her, his face was carefully blank. It's lovely. Is this for your show? Elena's stomach dropped. Adrian, look closer. The 3 figures. His eyes returned to the painting, and she saw the exact moment understanding dawned. But instead of joy, instead of excitement, his face went pale, then red, then pale again. Elena, he said slowly, standing up. Please tell me this is just artistic expression. I'm pregnant, she whispered, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. We're going to have a baby. The world shatters. The silence that followed those words was deafening. Adrian stared at her, as if she had transformed into a stranger, as if the woman he claimed to love had suddenly become something threatening and unwanted. This can't be happening, he muttered, running his hands through his hair. Not now? Not like this. Adrian. Elena's voice cracked. I know it's earlier than we planned, but we talked about this. We talked about a family, about children. We talked about it in the future. Adrian's voice rose, harsh and cold in a way she had never heard before. After we were married, after everything was settled, after... He stopped, shaking his head violently. This ruins everything. Elena felt tears burning her eyes. Ruins everything? Adrian, this is our child. This is the future we dreamed about, just arriving sooner. You don't understand. Adrian shouted, and Elena flinched. My father has just finalized a merger with the Sterling Corporation. Part of that deal, part of securing my future in the company, is my engagement to Victoria Sterling. It's being announced next week. The room seemed to tilt. Elena grabbed the back of a chair for support. What? I was going to tell you, Adrian said, his voice dropping but remaining cold. I was going to explain that it's just business, just appearances. That we could still be together, discreetly, until... Until what? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Until I was convenient? Until I could be properly hidden away as your mistress while you played happy family with someone else. Don't be dramatic, Adrian snapped. This is how the world works, Elena. You knew what you were getting into when you got involved with me. I knew I was falling in love with a man who promised to marry me. Elena cried, tears streaming down her face now. A man who gave me a ring, who made plans, who said I was his future. Adrian's jaw clenched. I said a lot of things, but reality has a way of interfering with fantasy. He looked at her stomach with something like disgust. You need to take care of this. I'll provide the money, find a discreet clinic. Get out. Elena, get out, she screamed, her voice breaking. Get out of my home, out of my life. How dare you? How dare you reduce our child to an inconvenience to be erased? Adrian's face hardened. Fine, but understand this, Elena. If you choose to go through with this pregnancy, you're on your own. I'll deny everything. It will be your word against mine. And everyone knows what kind of girl you are, don't they? The poor little artist who was always so eager to please, so desperate to climb above her station. Each word was a knife to Elena's heart. This couldn't be the same man who had held her under the stars, who had whispered poetry against her skin, who had promised her forever. Who are you? She whispered. I'm the man who was stupid enough to think we could have something real, Adrian said quietly, and for a moment, she saw pain flash across his face. But it was gone instantly, replaced by cold indifference. Goodbye, Elena. Consider this a lesson learned. He walked out, and Elena collapsed onto the floor beside her beautiful painting of their imagined future, sobbing until no more tears would come. The cruel aftermath. The next week was a nightmare. Adrian's engagement to Victoria Sterling was announced in all the society papers, a glamorous affair with photos of the perfectly matched couple, both beautiful, both wealthy, both from the right families. Victoria was everything Elena wasn't: sophisticated, polished, educated at the finest schools, connected to all the right people. Elena tried to reach Adrian, desperate to make him understand, desperate to believe that the man she loved was still in there somewhere. But her calls went unanswered, her messages ignored. When she finally went to the Blackwood resort to find him, security escorted her out with whispered warnings about restraining orders if she didn't leave Mr. Blackwood alone. The stress and heartbreak took their toll. 2 weeks after Adrian walked out of her life, Elena woke in the middle of the night with terrible cramping. By the time Maria got her to the hospital, it was too late. The pregnancy was over, and with it, the last fragile thread connecting her to the dreams she had cherished. Elena lay in the hospital bed, staring at the white ceiling, feeling nothing. The physical pain was manageable. It was the emptiness inside, the vast void where hope and love and future had once lived, that threatened to destroy her completely. Her mother came to visit, her face tight with disappointment and shame. News had spread through the small town. How could it not? The Martinez girl had gotten herself into trouble with one of the Blackwood boys, had been discarded like trash, had lost the baby in a way that some whispered might not have been entirely accidental. "I told you to be careful," her mother said quietly, unable to meet Elena's eyes. "I told you that men like that don't marry girls like us." "He said he loved me," Elena whispered, her voice hollow. "They always do, Mija. They always do." The vow of vengeance. The day Elena was released from the hospital, she stood once again at the edge of the cliff overlooking the ocean, the spot where Adrian had promised her forever. She looked down at the waves crashing against the rocks and understood, finally, their true nature. Beautiful, yes, but also dangerous, powerful, capable of destroying anything that stood in their way. Elena pulled the chain from around her neck, the one holding Adrian's ring, and held it up to catch the sunlight. For a long moment, she stared at it, remembering every promise, every lie, every moment of joy that had been built on quicksand. Then she threw it as hard as she could, watching it arc through the air and disappear into the churning water below. "You wanted a lesson, Adrian Blackwood," she said to the wind, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "Consider this one learned." But lessons work both ways. Elena turned her back on the ocean and walked toward town with new purpose. The heartbroken girl was gone. In her place was something harder, colder, more focused. If Adrian wanted to teach her about how the world really worked, then she would become the world's best student. She would learn everything he knew, become everything he valued, rise to heights he couldn't imagine. And then, when she was ready, when she had transformed herself into someone he would have to respect, she would make him feel exactly what she had felt. She would make him understand the cost of broken promises. 5 years, she told herself. Give me 5 years to become someone new, someone powerful, someone he can't ignore or dismiss or throw away. And then Adrian Blackwood would learn that some lessons come with a price far greater than he ever imagined. As Elena walked through the town that had watched her fall, she made a silent vow. She would return, she would rise, and she would have her revenge. The story was only beginning. The rise of the phoenix. 5 years later, the transformation. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse apartment, illuminating a space that spoke of refined taste and substantial wealth. Elena Martinez, though she no longer used that name in her professional life, stood before a mirror, adjusting the collar of her designer suit. The woman reflected back at her bore little resemblance to the heartbroken girl who had fled Maria Vista 5 years ago. Her once-long dark hair was now cut in a sophisticated shoulder-length style, highlighted with subtle caramel tones. Her figure, always slender, had been honed by regular yoga and Pilates into something both strong and elegant. But the most striking change was in her eyes. Where once there had been warmth and openness, now there was a calculated coolness, a sharpness that spoke of hard-won lessons and carefully guarded walls. "You're going to be late," a voice called from the kitchen. Marcus Chun, her business partner and the closest thing she had to family these days, appeared carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Big day? The gallery opening that's going to make you the toast of the art world." Elena accepted the coffee with a slight smile. "Not me. We. This success belongs to both of us." Marcus had found her at her lowest point, working 3 jobs in the city, living in a tiny apartment barely bigger than a closet, spending every spare moment either painting or studying business books borrowed from the library. He had been a young tech entrepreneur then, newly wealthy from selling his startup, looking to invest in art but knowing nothing about it. Their partnership had been unexpected but perfect. Marcus provided the capital and business connections. Elena provided the artistic vision and an almost supernatural ability to identify undervalued artists before they broke into the mainstream. Together, they had built Chin Martinez Galleries into one of the most respected contemporary art spaces on the East Coast. But success had never been the endgame for Elena. It was merely the weapon she needed to forge before returning to settle old scores. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked, watching her carefully. "Going back there, to that world. You've built something real here, something good. Revenge has a way of poisoning everything it touches." Elena's expression remained neutral, but her grip tightened slightly on the coffee cup. "I'm not seeking revenge, Marcus. I'm seeking balance. Justice. There's a difference." "Is there?" But Marcus didn't push further. He had learned over the years that once Elena set her mind to something, no amount of arguing would change it. At least promise me you'll be careful. These people, the Blackwoods, the Sterlings, they play by different rules. I know, Elena said softly, and there was something dark in her smile. I learned their rules very well. Now I'm going to beat them at their own game. The grand opening. The Chamartinez Gallery's new location occupied a historic building in the heart of the city's arts district. For weeks, the opening had been the subject of excited chatter among art collectors, critics, and society pages. Elena had made certain that the guest list included every important name in both the art world and the business elite, including, of course, Adrian Blackwood and his wife Victoria. As guests began arriving, Elena stood near the entrance, greeting each person with practiced charm. She had become expert at reading people, at knowing exactly what to say to put them at ease or throw them off balance. It was a skill born of necessity, learned through countless networking events where one wrong word could mean the difference between success and failure. Elena, darling. A woman in a dramatic red gown swept in, air kissing both her cheeks. The space is absolutely magnificent. You must introduce me to some of these new artists. I simply must be the first to add them to my collection. Elena laughed, the sound light and musical. Of course, Mrs. Pemberton. Let me show you. She moved through the crowd, hyper-aware of every entrance, every arrival. And then, an hour into the event, she felt it. A shift in the air, a heightened awareness that told her he had arrived. Adrian Blackwood stood in the doorway, his hand resting lightly on the small of his wife's back. He had aged well. The boyish softness had been replaced by sharp, distinguished features. His suit was impeccably tailored, his dark hair touched with just enough silver at the temples to make him look mature and powerful rather than old. Victoria Sterling Blackwood was exactly as beautiful as her photos suggested, tall and willowy, with the kind of effortless elegance that came from a lifetime of privilege. Her blonde hair was swept into an intricate updo, and her navy cocktail dress probably cost more than Elena used to make in 6 months. Elena took a deep breath, smoothed her expression into polite interest, and made her way toward them with a champagne flute in hand. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, she said warmly, extending her hand. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Elena Chun, the curator and co-owner. She watched Adrian's face carefully as he took her hand. For a split second, barely perceptible, there was recognition, shock, confusion. His grip faltered slightly before he recovered, his business mask sliding into place. Ms. Chun, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Congratulations on the gallery. It's quite impressive. Elena Chun. Victoria's brow furrowed slightly. Have we met before? You seem familiar somehow. Elena smiled serenely. I don't believe so. Though I have one of those faces, people often think they recognize me. Perhaps you've seen my photo in Art Forum? They did a profile on emerging curators last month. That must be it, Victoria agreed, though she still looked puzzled. I understand you're quite the art collector, Mrs. Blackwood. Elena continued, smoothly guiding them deeper into the gallery. Tell me, what draws you to contemporary work? As Victoria launched into an enthusiastic explanation, Elena felt Adrian's eyes on her, burning with questions he couldn't ask. Not here, not now. She pretended not to notice, keeping her attention focused on his wife, building rapport, establishing herself as someone interesting, someone worth knowing. By the end of the evening, Elena had Victoria's personal phone number and an invitation to lunch the following week. She had also given Adrian enough subtle reminders of their shared past, a turn of phrase he used to use, a reference to coastal landscapes, a mention of hidden coves, to ensure that he would spend the entire night wondering if she truly didn't recognize him, or if this was all part of some elaborate game. The answer, of course, was the latter, and the game was just beginning, planting seeds of doubt. The lunch with Victoria took place at an exclusive bistro where reservations were typically booked months in advance. Elena arrived first, having called in a favor to secure the best table, positioned by the window with natural light that made everything look softer, more intimate. Victoria arrived in a flurry of apologies about traffic, looking slightly flustered in a way that made her seem more human, more accessible. Elena stood to greet her with genuine warmth, or at least, warmth that appeared genuine. I'm so glad you could make it, Elena said as they settled into their seats. I have to admit, I have an ulterior motive for inviting you. Victoria's eyebrows rose with interest. Oh, I'm curating a special exhibition on women in contemporary art, and I'd love your input. You have such an excellent eye. Elena leaned forward conspiratorially. And between you and me, having Victoria Sterling Blackwood's name attached to the project would give it exactly the kind of prestige and attention it deserves. Victoria's pleasure at the flattery was evident. I'd be honored to help. Though I should warn you, my husband thinks I'm too impulsive with my art purchases. He's always trying to rein in my enthusiasm. Husbands often fail to understand the value of passion, Elena said with a knowing smile. But that's what makes us interesting, don't you think? Our refusal to be practical all the time. Over lunch, Elena expertly drew Victoria out, getting her to talk about her marriage, her life, her dreams. It became clear that beneath the polished exterior, Victoria was lonely. Adrian worked constantly, his attention absorbed by business deals and family obligations. Their marriage, while stable on the surface, lacked intimacy and genuine connection. Sometimes I wonder if he even sees me anymore, Victoria admitted after her second glass of wine. Or if I'm just another asset to be managed, like his properties and investments. Elena reached across the table to pat Victoria's hand sympathetically. I'm sure that's not true, but I understand the feeling. The men in our circles can be so focused on success that they forget the people who matter most. As they parted ways, Victoria impulsively hugged Elena. Thank you for this. I didn't realize how much I needed someone to talk to. Most of the women in my social circle are so competitive, so judgmental. It's refreshing to meet someone real. Elena returned the embrace, feeling an unexpected twinge of guilt that she quickly suppressed. Victoria wasn't the target here. She was collateral damage, yes, but Adrian's choices had put her in the crossfire. The strategic strikes. Over the following months, Elena wove herself seamlessly into the Blackwoods' social circle. She attended the same charity galas, joined the same clubs, served on the same nonprofit boards. She was charming without being threatening, successful without being boastful, friendly without being intrusive. But behind the scenes, Elena was methodically destroying Adrian's business empire, one strategic move at a time. It started small. A key investor who mysteriously pulled out of a major development deal. After Elena's partner Marcus had a private conversation about concerns regarding management practices. A promising new client who signed with a competitor instead, because Elena had quietly passed along information about better terms elsewhere. Each setback was small enough to be attributed to bad luck or market conditions. But together, they began to create a pattern of failure that worried Adrian's board of directors and disappointed his father. Elena also made certain that Adrian was constantly aware of her presence. She would appear at his favorite restaurant, laughing with important business contacts he had been trying to court. She would be photographed at events with influential people, her star rising as it slowly dimmed. And always, she maintained the perfect facade of having no idea who he really was to her. The torture of it, for Adrian, was exquisite. He couldn't confront her without revealing their past, which would expose him to Victoria and his family. He couldn't ignore her because she had become too important, too connected, too visible in his world. And he couldn't figure out whether she was doing this intentionally or whether it was all coincidental. Elena knew he was suffering from the uncertainty. She saw it in the tightness around his eyes when they crossed paths, in the way his gaze followed her across crowded rooms, in the increasing frequency of his business setbacks. One evening, at a charity auction, Elena bid against Adrian for a painting she knew he wanted, a seascape that reminded her painfully of their time together in Maria Vista. She drove the price up systematically, watching him grow more frustrated with each counterbid. Finally, when the amount became absurd, she gracefully withdrew. "It's yours," she said with a smile as she passed his table. "I wouldn't dream of keeping you from something you want so badly." The double meaning wasn't lost on him. His jaw clenched, but he couldn't respond, not with Victoria sitting beside him, not with dozens of society's elite watching. The unexpected variable. 3 months into her campaign, Elena arrived at one of Victoria's charity planning meetings to find an unexpected addition to the committee, Daniel Blackwood, Adrian's younger brother. Elena had researched the entire Blackwood family, of course. She knew Daniel was 26, had studied environmental science instead of business, and had spent the past few years working with conservation organizations in South America. He was the family rebel, the one who had rejected the corporate empire in favor of making what he believed was a meaningful difference in the world. What Elena hadn't expected was the immediate and genuine connection she felt when Daniel introduced himself. "Elena-chun," he said, his handshake firm but not aggressive. "I've heard so much about you from Victoria. She says you're revolutionizing the art world and putting stuffy old collectors in their place." Elena laughed despite herself. "That's a generous interpretation. I'm just trying to showcase talented artists who deserve recognition. Still, it takes courage to challenge the status quo." Daniel's eyes, so similar to Adrian's in color but completely different in expression, held genuine warmth. "I respect that." Over the following weeks, as they worked together on the charity project, Elena found herself looking forward to meetings where Daniel would be present. He was different from everyone else in his family, unpretentious, passionate about causes beyond profit, and refreshingly honest. He made her laugh. He challenged her opinions without being condescending. He asked about her past with genuine interest rather than social obligation, though Elena deflected those questions with practiced ease. "You're mysterious, Elena-chun," Daniel said one evening as they grabbed coffee after a particularly long planning session. "Every time I think I'm getting to know you, I realize I've barely scratched the surface." "Maybe I like keeping people guessing," Elena replied, stirring her coffee. "Or maybe you've been hurt before, and you've built walls so high that even you sometimes forget what's on the other side." The observation was so accurate that Elena felt momentarily exposed. She covered it with a light laugh. "That's quite an analysis from someone who barely knows me. Am I wrong?" Elena met his gaze, seeing nothing but kindness and genuine concern. "No," she admitted quietly. "You're not wrong. Want to talk about it?" "Not even a little bit." Daniel smiled. "Fair enough. How about we talk about something else then? There's a new documentary about ocean conservation playing at the Indie Theater downtown. Any interest in joining me this weekend?" Elena knew she should say no. Getting involved with Daniel Blackwood, even as friends, complicated everything. It added variables to her carefully constructed plan. It made her vulnerable in ways she had sworn never to be again. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "I'd like that." The cracks widened. Victoria's doubts about her marriage continued to grow, carefully nurtured by Elena's sympathetic ear and subtly pointed observations. It wasn't difficult. The problems in the Blackwood marriage were real and extensive. Elena simply helped Victoria see what had always been there. "He forgot our anniversary again," Victoria confessed over lunch one day, her eyes red-rimmed. "He sent flowers the next day with a card signed by his assistant. I know because the handwriting wasn't his." Elena made sympathetic noises while privately noting that Adrian's inattention was accelerating. "Good. Let him feel the consequences of treating people as disposable." "Have you talked to him about how you feel?" Elena asked gently. "Every time I try, he says he's under too much stress at work to deal with emotional conversations right now." Victoria's voice cracked. "I'm starting to wonder if he ever really loved me, or if I was just the appropriate choice at the appropriate time." "Oh, Victoria." Elena reached for her friend's hand, and this time, the sympathy wasn't entirely feigned. Whatever Victoria's role in Elena's past pain, the woman didn't deserve to be married to someone who treated her like a business arrangement. "I found something the other day," Victoria continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "In his study, letters from his old personal trainer, someone who worked at his father's resort years ago. They were intimate, personal. The kind of things you don't keep unless the person meant something to you." Elena's heart stopped. "Letters? From someone named Elena?" Victoria looked up, and Elena carefully kept her expression neutral. "I confronted him about it. He said it was nothing, just a summer fling, someone who got too attached and made things complicated. He acted like it was an embarrassment, something foolish from his past. A summer fling, someone who got too attached. The casual dismissal of everything they had shared, of the promises he had made, of the child she had lost." Elena felt fury burning white-hot in her chest, but her face remained sympathetic. Men often minimize their past relationships. It probably meant more to her than it did to him. "That's what bothers me," Victoria said. "The way he talks about her, about women in general sometimes, like they're transactions, like feelings are inconveniences." She paused. I'm starting to think I made a terrible mistake. What will you do? Elena asked, genuinely curious now. I don't know yet, but I'm done being treated like an accessory to his life. Victoria straightened her shoulders, and Elena saw a glimpse of steel beneath the soft exterior. I deserve better than this. The confrontation that changes everything. That evening, Elena stood in her apartment, staring out at the city lights, Victoria's words echoing in her mind. A summer fling. Someone who got too attached. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Just heard through the grapevine that Blackwood lost the Riverside development deal. His company's stock dropped 12% today. Your plan is working. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Elena felt hollow. Another text appeared, this one from Daniel. Hey, wanna grab dinner? I could use some company, and you're pretty much the only person I know in this city who doesn't want to talk about quarterly earnings.